This video is part 2 of the Taekwondo lesson on breath control. I'll be showing you how to control your breath when doing normal motion, slow motion, fast motion, continuous motion, and connecting motion. The following graphs and diagrams will be used to help visualize what is happening with the breath in these examples. The sine wave graph shows the height of the body during the execution of the techniques. This helps to illustrate the timing and rhythm during the various stages. The lung capacity graph shows the amount of air in the lungs as a percentage of the full lung capacity. The graph helps to illustrate when and how much to inhale or exhale. Notice the green line, which is the functional residual capacity, which shows the volume of air when the diaphragm and chest are relaxed. The arrow diagrams show the direction and quantity of airflow. The bigger the arrow, the greater the airflow. This helps to illustrate when and how much to inhale or exhale. Unless specified otherwise, a technique should be done in normal motion. This usually means the technique uses a full sine wave. During the first stage of the sine wave, the body relaxes as it goes into a neutral position. At this stage, your diaphragm and chest are relaxed, so the volume of air will reach the functional residual capacity. Depending on the amount of air in your lungs from the previous movement, air may be inhaled, exhaled, or there may be no airflow at all. In the second stage, the body raises up as you wind up for the technique. At this stage, you should inhale through your nose. In the third and final stage, the body usually drops sharply as the limb is accelerated. Your breath should exhale at the same time by contracting your abdomen sharply. At the moment of impact, you stop the breath. Notice there is a brief pause before moving on to the next movement. The breath must be synchronized with the technique. A sharp technique will have a sharp exhalation. A longer drawn-out technique, such as hooking block or scooping block, will have a longer drawn-out exhalation. So the breath control will sound like this. Notice how the breath matches the technique. A full sine wave is not always used in normal motion. There are situations where only the last stage of the sine wave is used. And in rare exceptional circumstances, the body can rise up instead of dropping on the final stage of the technique. In slow motion, the breath control will sound like this. Slow motion techniques are done slowly with no power. The breath control is done in the same way as in normal motion, except that there's a steady flow of air during exhalation since there's no acceleration with the technique. And obviously, the technique and therefore the breath lasts longer. You still need to contract the abdomen as you exhale, but this is done slowly and gradually. In fast motion, the breath control will sound like this. When two techniques are done in fast motion, there is no pause before going on to the second movement. Also, there's no time to go into a relaxed neutral position, so once the first technique is performed, you bounce straight up again to wind up for the second technique. The breath control for the first technique is the same as with normal motion, and you exhale sharply both times you drop the body to execute the techniques. On the first technique, the breath is stopped, but only for a short time, because you need to quickly wind up for the next technique. As you do this, relax the chest and diaphragm rather than purposely inhale. Notice that you may still inhale a little if the air in your lungs has dropped below the functional residual capacity. In continuous motion, the breath will sound like this. With continuous motion, two or more techniques are linked together with a continuous breath. This means that even though you contract and relax your abdomen for each technique, the breath is not stopped until the last technique. Each technique will use sine wave motion, but there is no pause between them. Each time a technique is executed, there will be sharp pulsating exhalations. You will notice that there's a very soft exhalation between the techniques. It is important not to exhale too much on the first technique to reserve some air for the techniques that follow. In connecting motion, the breath will sound like this. Connecting motion is when you join two techniques with one breath and one sine wave. This is only used when the first technique is soft, such as a hooking block or a scooping block, which don't require sharp impact, therefore the breath is longer and drawn out. Techniques such as these can be done during the second stage of the sine wave as you raise the body, which then allows you to blend it with another technique, which you can do when you drop the body. Since you need to exhale on the second stage while you are performing the first technique, it means you have to inhale quickly on the first stage of the sine wave. Usually you should completely relax in the first stage of the sine wave, but in the case of connecting motion, you'll need to contract your diaphragm, but keep most of the rest of your body relaxed at the same time. Just a final word about breath control. Although your breath will be affected by your physical activity and physical, mental and emotional state, it's important to realize by controlling your breath, you can also affect your physical, mental and emotional state and improve the functioning of your physical activity.